Bauer'S.
We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome to this week's episode, 80-20 Baseball Community. Always pumped up to be here, coming out with a new episode every Tuesday, our weekly check-in on our path to being much better coaches. So it's the 5th season of baseball that this podcast has gone through or is going through. And I know baseball's played and trained throughout the year. Summer's a big time. Winter preparation for the upcoming spring is a big time. Dialing in those individual skills in the fall or maybe playing some fall ball is definitely a part of the game. So it's definitely not just a spring sport, but I just went back and looked at the listener statistics for this podcast over the last 5 springs, and it continues to grow every year. More and more of you are tuning in, and that pumps me up. I'm trying to give back to the youth baseball community. This is episode 229. Haven't run a single ad on here. Haven't plugged the product. We might have plugged some things on here, but it wasn't because we had a deal with them or any of that. I truly believe I've been put in a position to really help support all of you coaches, parents that are going through the youth baseball and the youth sports world, not just because I've been heavily involved with baseball for over 35 years, going back to 1985 when I was scorekeeping at Dodger games, when my parents would take me, started playing baseball in 1986, played all the way through college, professionally, coached for many years, players from the age of 6 all the way up to major league players. And I've been a teacher for 18 years. 12 of those inner city LA, inner city Los Angeles. I've taught in affluent areas. I taught all those years, deep inner city, North Long Beach, Paramount. Many of my students were from Compton and Watts. I've taught kindergarten classes, second grade classes, middle school, and a lot of high school, being a parent myself, and having studied coaches and been fascinated with studying coaches and what makes coaches successful, going on 20 plus years now, going back to when I dove in and really started studying the Zen master, Phil Jackson. And ever since I started studying coaches, when I watch a game, if I'm watching an NFL game, an MLB game, college football, college basketball, volleyball, whatever, or I'm at a jiu-jitsu practice with my kid, I'm studying the coaches way more than the athletes. And I know that's not the norm, but I think that's been my path and I really like it. And I'm here and I love the feedback, all the emails I get from all of you that are getting a lot out of this podcast, and that pumps me up. Helps to keep me rolling out a new episode each week. A few weeks ago, I went to my friend Garrett's funeral, and of course, I've talked about that a little bit on this podcast. A real bummer. Gone way too young. Seemed like yesterday we were playing Little League together. He was on the A's, and I was on the Angels. We were just out there smiling, having fun, playing Little League baseball. Life goes fast. And at the funeral, I saw across the way at the service and didn't get a chance to get over and catch up. There were so many people that I hadn't seen in years there and was talking with, but I did see a coach I had back in high school, a JV coach, and he was really good at showing that he cared about you, smiling, but he was very clear with you and firm if you stepped over the line. He didn't have a lot of rules, but you didn't break them. And if you did, he'd follow through with the consequence. He didn't have a permanent scowl, but he would bring it out every 2 weeks. And I was thinking about all of you on the podcast, and I thought, man, Coach Wren was just a really good coach at the balance. And when we go out there as coaches, it's important we avoid the extremes of being a dictator, but also being overly friendly and just giving in and catering and coddling our kids, our players. Now, I think it's important that we don't Jekyll and hide it. It can't be because we're in a better mood or we're tired or we didn't get sleep or we're feeling good or our energy levels are high or whatnot. That can't be the reason that we're showing both sides of that coaching. It needs to be because that's our plan. That's our practice in, practice out, game in, game out approach where we are coming from a balanced place. Firm, but loving, caring. And so it got me thinking about all of you when I saw one of my favorite coaches of all time, Coach Wren, my JV baseball coach back in 1997. Oh, and by the way, we won almost every game. I think we went 24-3. And one of those losses was because the varsity team dropped down a junior who wasn't playing, hadn't pitched all season, and he got hit around and we lost. So with our players playing, we were 24-2. So it works. We shouldn't be Bobby Knight and we shouldn't be out there trying to be the appeaser. So I wanted to share that with all of you. All right, in this week's episode, we're going to talk about how to tell if a pitching or hitting coach really gets it, or at least a good chance that they're getting it. If you're looking at the percentages, there's a high percentage way to gauge if a pitching or hitting coach really gets what they're doing. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to discuss Trevor Bauer getting too cute and the bad message it may send to youth pitchers. And this was coming from a video that I watched a few weeks ago. I'm not against Trevor Bauer. I've always supported him. I thought he got jobbed by MLB. I thought he got bad into that deal. So I'm a Trevor Bauer fan in some ways. This is nothing against Trevor Bauer. He's got some quirks and he talks a lot. I don't agree with everything he says. In fact, I'm going to share with you something that I watched. It was actually a really good video, but it sends a bad message to youth pitchers and maybe even and for that matter, even pitchers at the college and pro level that are watching it and trying to learn from it, study it, and I'll dive into that here shortly. I have a passage from the Daily Dad newsletter, and it's a good one. I'll read that passage. Recommended the Daily Dad newsletter. About 1 out of 10 of those I see eye to eye with. I don't really like the angle it's coming from, but 90% of those newsletters are gold. And Monday through Friday, I look forward to reading it to prime my mindset, to calibrate my mindset. They're short. They take a few minutes to read or less. And I got a good one to share today. Also, I have the top 5 X posts of the month. When I say that, it sounds like we're going to talk about CD Lamb. You know, when I say X posts, it sounds like I'm going to share with you some of the best route running of the past month from NFL receivers. As much as I like the direction of X, nobody confused tweets of the month with X posts of the month, but I digress. All right, let's dive into how to tell if a pitching or hitting coach really gets it. Now, this isn't a surefire way, of course, but it's a high percentage play. It's a high percentage way of assessing whether the private pitching or hitting coach or your hitting coach or your pitching coach that you're taking your kid to knows what they're doing. There's a high percentage way to assess. Do they coach from the ground up? Do they coach from the ground up? Look where their eyes are when they're evaluating your kid. You got to follow me on this, but trust me on this. You will come across pitching and hitting coaches that are inexperienced or haven't been doing it long enough or haven't quite connected the dots on cause and effect. And so they'll address the symptom or what the result is, the effect, but they're not following it back down the kinetic chain to its root cause. Typically, root causes in pitching or root causes of issues in hitting, more often than not, stem from the lower half, stem from things closer to the ground. So the flaw or the issue might be more apparent with the hands, the head, the arms, the upper half. And I'm not saying coaches shouldn't look at the upper half. In fact, I think if you use the upper half as the initial assessment, that's not a bad thing. But the coach shouldn't just look at the issue with the release point and then start trying to fix that exact release point where the hands are placed. A pitcher with an inconsistent release point, a suboptimal release point, will likely have that issue because of something they were doing much earlier in the delivery. Now, when I say earlier, we're talking a second earlier. And as all of you know, when it plays out, there's a lot of moving parts. So when you take your kid to a pitching or hitting lesson, how much time does that coach spend looking up high or looking down low? Are they looking at the feet, the balance, up through the hips and the torso, posture, or are they going straight to the hands and arms? Or does their message and coaching hover solely or mainly around the arms, the elbows, the shoulders, the hands, the fingers? You can always ask if something comes up, if they point out an issue or they see a flaw. You could be up front and say, what's the root cause of that? And see how they work backwards from there and check their reasoning. So when you take your kid to get those private lessons, is the coach working from the ground up? Again, that doesn't mean they can't address things with their hands, shoulders, elbows, grip. Another way of asking that question that I mentioned earlier is asking the coach, where is that problem starting at? If anything, this will get the coach thinking about reverse engineering the issue. A lot of inexperienced pitching coaches will start coaching up the grip. Early on, they think changing the grip or adjusting the grip is a great way to make huge changes or big changes, or it's going to fix an issue with the player's changeup or curveball or whatnot. I'll tell you what, Greg Maddux could have taken any grip you showed him, any grip, and thrown a good pitch with it. Why? Because his lower half up through his upper half was dialed in. Greg Maddux could have picked up a ball and you could have just yelled out a pitch to throw, something he might not have ever thrown before, and he would have executed it with a high degree of effectiveness. Why? Because he had everything dialed in from the lower half working up. All consistently great hitters and pitchers have very, very few issues going on with the lower half, because lower half issues become massive glaring issues by the time the bat makes contact with the ball or the pitch is released. If the torso posture is off with a hitter, if the dynamic balance is not right with a pitcher, it doesn't matter what you do with their grip or their wrist or their shoulder. It's going to be very difficult for them to be successful. The coach that's doing that is trying to solve and fix the symptom and not the root cause. Root causes, more often than not, start in the lower half up through the posture. So keep that in mind when you're coaching and evaluating a pitching or hitting coach. And with that said, let's talk about a pitcher who's entertaining. That is Trevor Bauer. So a few weeks back, I was watching a video. He pitched in a spring training game. He was pitching for a Korean team, if I remember correctly. And he essentially went back after the outing and he recorded a reflection piece, his own critique of the outing. And I'll summarize the flaw here and the bad message it sends to youth pitchers. Just overthinking things. He's just a thinker. And maybe that's why he has all these creative hobbies. He's got these things he does. He likes to build things. When you're out there on the baseball field, paralysis by analysis. And I saw it in his outing. He boasted about having 4 different slide steps. He kept talking about how he had 4 different slide steps, and he was essentially kind of bragging about it. Now, I've always kind of been a fan of the guy, so this isn't a knock on him. I'm just using it as an example, and y'all can go see it. And again, I talk about these professional players because we have quick, easy access to those videos. So he talks at length about having 4 different slide steps and how great that is, boasting about having these 4 different slide steps. And I know most of you know when I say slide step, I'm referring to when he's pitching, just having that quick delivery, a shorter leg lift, a shorter knee lift, just trying to be quick to the plate. Now in the video, he's doing it because he's trying to mess with the hitter's timing, and he has 4 different slide steps to screw with the hitter's timing. The number one goal in pitching is to replicate a consistent release point. Now, there's a lot that goes into that, starting from the ground up, but a surefire way to mess up the syncing up of your kinetic chain is to artificially change the timing of your delivery every single pitch like he was doing. In fact, I wouldn't recommend changing the timing of your delivery at all. It should be consistent. That's why I have the videos and I'm such a huge proponent of the power slide step. I've coached thousands of pitchers. I've gone the other way. I've done the different slide step. I've been down that path. I coached that way for years. It's not the better way. One delivery. Why? The hardest thing to do in pitching is to sync up and have a consistent release point. If you can get a consistent release point, you're going to have consistent pitches. Now, when it comes to velocity and things like that, there's some other factors, of course, but accuracy is about having the same release point. And so he talks about having these fancy slide steps, and you're going, well, Coach Bo, what happened in the video? His pitch quality was terrible. Every time he tried to get cute with the slide step, he never came close to hitting his target. He never came close to his target, the target being the catcher's glove. He bounced pitches. Every count went 3-2, walked a few guys, left a couple pitches up that got hit hard. So Bauer is known for his out-of-the-box thinking and his advanced thought process, but he crossed that line of trying to be too cute and too clever. He tried to be too cute and too clever. And if you try to do this in any industry or any job, more often than not, it's going to backfire. Cute and clever doesn't get it done. Consistent, repeatable actions. The fundamentals, the core principles, the core actions, first principles. If we start adding and layering more cuteness and trying to be too clever, the only thing we're going to outsmart is our own pitching delivery, is our own hitting swing. The only thing we're going to outsmart is the path we should be taking of simple effectiveness, of being effectively simple. To me, this was a clear example of the law of diminishing returns. Having 4 slide steps, is that going to help him or hurt him more? He crossed the line, he got too cute, trying to be too clever. He's overthinking it. He thinks he's going to get better with more moves and not fewer better moves. So in other words, he's fine with having 4 slide steps that allow him to have at best a mediocre delivery rather than optimizing and perfecting his one delivery. Look at Mariano Rivera. Mariano Rivera was a first ballot Hall of Fame pitcher. He threw 91 miles an hour, 92. He didn't blow up by anybody, but he never got cute. Go watch Mariano Rivera pitch. Go back and watch some of his outings. Just see how different he pitches from pitch to pitch. In fact, try to get footage of when he started in the mid-90s and see how much different it looks when he retired years later. I don't think you're going to see much difference at all. And here's Trevor Bauer pulling out this new 4 slide step bag of tricks. So if youth pitchers are listening to that or watching that, they may very likely not have the context or the experience to step back and say, yeah, he's talking about these 4 different slide steps and how it's messing with the hitter's timing and this, that, and the other. But every time he does it, or more often than not, his pitch is terrible. He's not hitting his spot and he's missing by 5 feet. So if you step back and go, wait a second, yeah, he's saying he's got this bag of tricks and he's selling it like it's helping. And then you look at the result and you're like, it's not helping. None of the great pitchers, I can't recall a great pitcher that got cute. They just got consistent. Don't get cute, get consistent. So you can go back and check it out. Trevor Bauer analyzed spring training outing. I believe he was going up against some Dodgers minor leaguers. All right, here's a very helpful passage, message, newsletter, email that I got from the Daily Dad. Well, it wasn't just sent to me. Anybody can sign up for this newsletter. I recommended it before. I have no affiliation with them. But here it is. Quote, they're not listening. They're acting crazy. They're fighting with their siblings constantly. You can feel them drifting in the wrong direction. You can see their habits slipping, their grades declining. They've just called you to tell you that they've wrecked the car. Obviously, you're going to have to deal with this. But where do you start? Connection first is what Dr. Becky's advice, the author of the book Good Inside, said. Connection as opposed to shame, as opposed to criticism, as opposed to questions and doubt, as opposed to consequences. There will be a time for all that. Connection does not mean approval. Connection is an opening that allows for movement. Connection is when we show our kids it's okay to be you right now. Even when you're struggling, it's okay to be you. I'm here with you as you are. Let's start by slowing down. Let's start by letting them know that this doesn't change how we feel about them. Let's start by letting them know that we are here to help, that we're on their team. Let's start by letting them know that we care about them. And once we've established this, then we can get to work. Connection is not at odds with accountability, with learning a lesson, with consequences, or even criticism. In fact, connection is not at odds with accountability, with learning a lesson, consequences, or even criticism. In fact, it makes the chances of all these things landing even higher because they'll be listening. They'll be less on guard. They'll see it not as part of the problem, but part of the solution. And that's the end of the email there. So in this email, this newsletter from the Daily Dad, they weaved in a message from Dr. Becky, who wrote the book Good Inside. And coincidentally, I read that book about 6 months ago, and it's a good one. So this message is saying connection first. Instead of coming at our players and our kids with criticism, with questions, with doubt, with consequences right off the bat, connect first. And I take this to say, start connecting right away. Don't wait to build a strong connection with players, with your team, with your kids. Don't wait to build that strong connection like when you go to check the Christmas lights for the first time, like Clark Griswold. Don't be a Clark, all right? Let's make sure our connection is good. Let's make sure everything is dialed in before we try to make a big change. So let's make sure that connection is strong. Some simple ways to do that we've talked about before. Show that you care about the player, the kids, the team. Ask questions about them more than just what pitch they like to hit. Start from a level of calmness. Stay consistent. Don't put players on blast, especially individual players on blast in front of their peers, unless you've been working with them for years. Yes, years. Yell praise, whisper criticism as often as possible. These are just some examples of how to build connection, how to connect with players. See, the opposite of the connection is the disconnection, and we'll start disconnecting with players if we start putting them on blast in front of their peers, if we don't show that we actually care about them, if we show that we're a transactional coach rather than a transformational coach. In other words, coaches that want to coach players so they can help them win games rather than helping players so they can be better people long after they can do anything to help the coach. I'll read this last part right here again because I just think it's gold. Connection is not at odds with accountability. It's not at odds with learning a lesson or with consequences or even criticism. In fact, it makes the chances of all of those things landing even higher because they'll be listening. They'll be less on guard. You want to make big withdrawals with players, you got to have a lot of deposits in the account. And for some reason, those deposits only seem to be worth about 10% of your average withdrawal. That's just how it kind of shakes out. The checks we're depositing are never as big as the checks we're trying to cash when it comes to that kind of thing with our players and even our own kids. So connection first. I do recommend coming right out of the gate with establishing expectations, rules, standards. But if you're really good with it, you can send a message of connection even before you lay out your expectations and rules and consequences, etc. You can warm up the reception by throwing in a few statements before that show players and the team that you genuinely care about them. In other words, why you're putting these rules and these expectations and these standards out there, why you're implementing them for their own good. Why is it for their own good and how is it going to help them? And that shows that you care about them if you word it correctly. You say the truth, you're not fibbing, but make sure when you sell it, you're thinking of it from their perspective. Who's this coach? I don't know this coach. First time I've met him. I've seen this coach around, but I really don't know him. Never played for him. Why should I believe this coach? More rules. Got to warm up that reception. Connect. So keep that in mind when we go out there. Connection first. So we establish expectations, standards, rules, what have you first, but we also connect almost simultaneously in those first couple meetings, first couple practices. And then we really look to connect as often as possible and then enforce consequences if and when they're necessary. We're not on the lookout for criticism. And this is why it's so important, in my opinion, not to sit there and try to overcoach players and everything and correct every mistake they make. Spend most of your time trying to connect, lift up, praise. So then when you drop the hammer, you don't bend the nail. Most coaches, unfortunately, go one way or the other too far. They go Bobby Knight, or they get passive and they coddle and they let the kids run the show. You got to give a lot of praise and you have to discipline when it's needed without hesitation. All right, the top 5 coaching X posts of the month. This first one comes from Justin Sua, at Justin Sua, S-U-A. In stressful situations, the response of the team flows from the response of the leader. Calm is contagious. Great coaching comes from calmness. Sure, from there we can light a little fire when needed. We have to be at a base level of calmness throughout the practice, throughout the game, throughout our coaching career. We got to come from a level, an area of calmness. We got to come from calmness and then work up from there. Not try to bring ourselves down constantly to being calm. We don't want to start way up, high anxieties, pedal to the metal, Bobby Knight, tossing chairs. We want to start with calmness and work up when we need to and hit the gas when we need to and only when we need to. So I thought this post was great by Justin Sua. In stressful situations, the response of the team, the response of our team flows from the response of the leader, us, the coaches. Calm is contagious. Number 2 in our top 5 X posts of the month, Jamie Bechtler, Coach Bechtler, B-E-C-H-L-E-R. Jamie puts out a ton of gold. Body language never whispers. It screams. This is something you could infuse into your post-practice, pre-game, pre-practice message. Players, our body language never whispers. It screams. This is very useful for players that are in junior high looking to move to high school, and definitely for high school players that are looking to get a scholarship or drafted. But I think it's something that needs to be coached up from a young age. So body language never whispers, it screams. If our head's down, if we're slumped on the bench with our arms crossed, that sends a glaring message. And bad body language is infectious, not just with teammates and not just infectious to other teammates, but to our own psyche. It's really hard to be confident when we're slumped, slouched, shoulders hunched over, looking down, right? And it's hard not to feel confident with our chest up, shoulders back, chin up, with a confident look on our face. So I thought this one by Coach Bechtler was a really good message. Short and to the point. Body language never whispers, it screams. Number 3, Coach Bechtler again. And this one has a sign, looks like it's on a gym wall that says, you cannot practice soft and expect to play hard. You cannot practice soft and expect to play hard. Now for youth baseball, I see this as having soft practices, slow-moving practices, drills that coddle players, drills that are trying to get 100% success rates. I don't see this as how the coach words things or the message or the culture of being a hardliner. I see it as if your practice is soft, if it's slow, if your drills are easy, you can't expect to play hard. You can't expect the game to be easy. So I thought this message was a good one. You cannot practice soft and expect to play hard. All right, number 4 on our top coaching posts of the month. This one comes from The Winning Difference at The Winning Diff, D-I-F-F 1. Mental strength is not a gift. It's something that comes with work. The difference between the biggest champions and the ones that are struggling to get to the highest level is the ability to not stay in those emotions for too long. And I think this was a quote that came from Novak Djokovic That's where the quote came from that the Winning Difference account posted. That's somebody who gets the mental game. And I hope I'm saying the name right. I followed tennis pretty consistently back in the mid-90s. Sampras, Agassi, Ivanisevic, Courier, Lendl, Celis, Navratilova. Used to watch a lot of tennis back in the day. Not so much anymore, but I've heard some great videos from Novak Djokovic that are gold. So I recommend going and looking up on YouTube, Mental Game, Novak Djokovic. There's definitely some gold there. And you might be saying, Coach, well, how do we fit that in? Give it to your players to watch. Give it to your kid to watch. I wouldn't give them something every day, but maybe once a week you say, hey, it's one of the greatest athletes on the planet. Look what he said. The difference between the biggest champions and the ones that are struggling to get to the highest level is the ability to not stay in those emotions for too long. I like how this is worded. It's not saying don't have emotions. It's not saying don't get emotional. It's saying move past the emotions or move through the emotions quickly so they don't control you longer than they should. It goes with that message of players, it's okay to have emotions. Just don't let the emotions have you. All right, number 5 on the top 5 Coaching X posts of the month. This one's a little different. It's from @Save Your Sons. This one's a little longer, but this will wrap up our podcast here. Here it is. I noticed a bad habit creeping in a few months ago. At bedtime with our oldest, we read 2 stories every night. Then we listened to an audio story. Gradually, I found myself rushing through the process, getting frustrated with how long it would take to pick out a book, talk about the pictures, and inevitably the book or audio stories would raise questions that my kid wanted to talk through. And in my brain, all of this took too long. We aren't being efficient. We're wasting time. And then one day it struck me, what the heck am I rushing around for? Why am I wishing away this precious time with my son? What would I do instead of hang out with him at bedtime? Go downstairs and do nothing? What a joke. My humble advice to dads reading this is to stop rushing things that don't actually need rushing. Do an extra story. Have the random conversation. Let them talk and let the minutes pass by together. Because the good old days are happening right now. And it's a shame to wish them away. Wow, the good old days are happening right now, and it's a shame to wish them away. Don't rush that time at the field when you're out there with your kid. Don't rush it. Look to extend it. We're all guilty of this. We're all thinking about the next thing. But as soon as you do, just remember, the good old days are right now. Let's not wish them away. We're all going to blink, and we're going to wish we had it all back to do again, to enjoy again. So when you're out there hitting ground balls, throwing batting practice, just keep going until they say enough, or until it actually is enough and it's too dark, or they're getting blisters on their hand, or they need to get some sleep or eat. But don't rush it away. Look to extend, not to stop. I hope you all like the variety there on those coaching tweets. Some of them were not directly talking to coaches, but in a way, they can be absolutely helpful to all of us that are coaches, parents. And with that said, something else that can help us as coaches, the drill design guide over at 8020baseball.com. I got new videos over there. I got some good hitting approach videos. I broke down 4 different at-bats, Mike Trout, Seager, Evan Carter, and Jackson Holiday. Broke down some at-bats from those 4. So you can see how I would assess the hitting approach, the hitting plan. Almost all the videos have been updated. I edit them so there's not a lot of wasted time. They move quick, a lot of bang for your buck. At the very top of the website, the drill design guide, throw your email and your name in there. It'll get emailed to you. You'll have it quick. It's a 21-page PDF. The 3rd version came out just a few months ago, and it breaks down the 7/8 parts that are necessary for designing great drills. Next week, I'll talk about the coaching battery life. We'll talk about a strategy to utilize our battery life as coaches as best as possible. I will share 9 examples of a message that we can share with our team that will help their mindset in a very key area, not just of baseball, but life. And I'll give you 9 specific examples of a message that you can share, you can take right out and share. And we got a few more things to talk about next week. I look forward to seeing you back next Tuesday with the next episode. And until then, let's keep taking care of our health so we can be there to take care of our families, our close friends, and let's take this information out to the field and put it into play. Let's not strike out looking. Let's put this stuff into play and build from there. All right, everyone, take care of yourself. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.